Shavua Tov, everyone. Yair Spitz here from the field with a post-Shabbat update. So as I mentioned before Shabbat, as things get more established here and we get into more of a routine, also when it comes to Shabbat, we've been able to progress things a little bit. So I was able to come more prepared. We had more Shabbat candles, we had more chalot, we had more grape juice, we had more time. Definitely more time than last Shabbat to get things ready. We had 4 young women who came to light candles. Quite a few male soldiers who came wanted to hear candle lighting as well. The truth is, it was because we were able to prepare it longer, and I was able to give for those who came for the candle lighting. I had a chance to give a short bracha. I find myself making up brachot, not something I'm so accustomed to, or making up Yehiratzonim, but it's something that I find that a lot of people here are interested in, especially the more Masorti traditional crowd. So I've gained that skill. So I wish all those who came to the candle lighting that just as we're lighting candles here, they'll all soon be able to be in their own homes, light candles with their families. Bezrat Hashem, one day light candles with their children, with their daughters, and may the Nerot Shabbat be something that we gain strength from and confidence in what we're doing here, and the fact that Am Yisrael, of all the generations of Am Yisrael, are looking to us and strengthening us. The future generations will look back at these candles that we're lighting right now with emunah, with faith, and with confidence with what we did, and knowing that we were here representing them. And the truth is, it's something that just came to mind, and I just said it. And the truth is, it was very, very moving. To my more moving than I expected for those around me and for myself as well. Right after candle lighting, we were able to get a minimal minyan. We have about 4 or 5, I'd say, traditionally observant, like I guess mamash from people in the battalion, and then there are another 5 or 6 either traditional people or people who were just interested enough and felt comfortable enough coming. They didn't really know exactly what to do, so I explained a little bit as we went along what Kabbalat Shabbat is, and it was took me back to the days where I did instructional davening services. We davened Kabbalat Shabbat, davened Maariv, and while we were doing that, without me even knowing it, there were about 20 soldiers who, under one of the large tents, they set an actual Shabbat table with tablecloth and with all the donations, the food donations that we got on Friday, with real decent Shabbat food. Set, individual plates, each plate with its own little challah, and it was a little surreal seeing, after davening, coming in and seeing an actual Shabbat table set on field chairs and field tables. And it was they were waiting for us to finish davening, did kiddush. Regretfully, it turned out that some of the soldiers were videoing the whole thing, which I feel very ambivalent about, because obviously I don't want people taking a video, Jewish people, Jews taking a video on Shabbat of me doing Kiddush and singing Shalom Aleichem, but there's a little part of me that I won't admit it to them. There's a little part of me that would be interested to see it, or more important, for them to be able to look at it, or show it to their children one day. But obviously, I would have preferred if they didn't videotape it and only kind of discovered it afterwards. So in general, the rest of the day was very quiet as far as Shabbat day. Even though we still did anything that was vital, the general day is very quiet. In a regular day, we do at least 1, if not 2, different drills without being notified beforehand, to make sure that everyone is constantly ready. Everyone knows what to do in this state of emergency or some other state of emergency. But on Shabbat, there were no drills. Lets people kind of rest a little bit, gather their strength, kind of have a little bit of a menuchat nefesh. That's in general. That's the case in the army, and here as well. And it was something that allowed me to kind of do my thing, which is to spend a lot of time visiting the different soldiers, talking to them in small groups, individually, devoting a lot of attention to them, and having some very meaningful conversations. Another thing to know and to understand, that any army base, whether it's a formal base or it's like us, who are just kind of in the field, there's always going to be security guards. There's always going to be at least 1, 2, or 3 or 4 different points around the encampment where they're going to be constantly going to be guards posted. And this is something that's just a routine thing. Almost everyone on the base does it. So at night it's an hour a night, and during the day it's 2 hours at night, because if you do it for too long at night, there's a fear that someone will doze off and fall asleep on the guard, and that's obviously not good, and this could be dangerous. And during the day, it's 2 hours because it's easier to stay awake and focus for 2 hours during the day. Now, officers, as a general rule in the Israeli army, one of the few entitlements that officers have is that they do not do guard duty. The official rationale for that is that the assumption is that officers are busy throughout the day and also at night with officer jobs and tasks, and especially at night, they don't necessarily get the same amount of hours of sleep as regular soldiers, and therefore they're exempt. That's only part of the reason. I think it's just a tradition in the army that officers, that's an entitlement they have because of their rank. So this is something that, I personally, I'm not the only one there. There are other officers like that as well in other places, but I feel that's entitlement that isn't necessarily justified, at least for me. I don't have as many tasks on a daily basis. So what I try to do as often as I can is to go up onto the mound where the guard post is, and just to sit there and say hello to people and use it as an opportunity to get to know them, or to talk, to have just chit chat, or to have in-depth conversations. So today, especially on Shabbat, where everything is so quiet, I had a chance to do that. So I went up to one of the guideposts, and with someone there who I know, I've known him, but I've never really had a serious conversation with him. So it's a guy. He's in his late 20s. He is he's in the beginning of doing his doctorate in robotics at the Technion. So he sat down there and we spoke for probably about an hour. So mostly revolved around talking about the what's happening with Gaza, and what's happening with what the army should do or shouldn't do or could do or can't do. And there was something he said to me that really hadn't thought about it before. And he pointed out to me, we're talking about the fact that, regardless of right and left, it seems like the whole country for the last 25, 30 years kind of lost its way with understanding, with how it sees itself in the, lost its way in thinking that we can kind of forget about the problems with our surrounding enemies, and we can make believe we're just like any other nation, and everything is fine as long as we put up a fence, when we put up some technology, everything will be fine. And one of the things he pointed out, which I found interesting, he said that the people who were involved in the terrible atrocities of 3 weeks ago, they're probably people in their early to late 20s. He says, and that means it's the first generation of Arabs in Gaza who grew up under the rule of Hamas. I mean, this is the generation that was fully indoctrinated by Hamas education and hearing Hamas ideology basically from birth until adulthood. And he said to me, and we made believe that the fact, we knew that we had an enemy who believed in basically the most vehement anti-Semitic rhetoric and was teaching it to the kids. And we found it comfortable to make believe that it's not that important, or it doesn't make a difference, or it's just a matter of time. And I said, and now we're seeing the fruits of a generation that grew up with Jewish hatred of Jews in their hearts and surrounded by it. And he said, and there's also the generation that grew up without any real interaction with Jews because of how things developed. And he said, and this is something that we can't forget again, that if we have an enemy that even in their own areas that are teaching these things and believe in these things, we should always believe our enemies and what they say, and we shouldn't let ourselves delude ourselves into wishful thinking. It's not something that made me realize that yes, and to hear this from someone just so plainly put, I found to be a very interesting point. I went around from the different units, the different smaller units within our battalion to do kiddush and to see if they need anything. So I came to the command center, and there were a few people sitting there, and there's a soldier who's in his early 30s, and he sees me. He says, Rabbi, come, tell us some words of wisdom. I shared with him basically the idea that I practiced on all of you yesterday, and then from that developed a conversation. And he shared with me that he's in the middle of a course, meaning he says that he's civilly married to a non-Jewish woman. He said that she's from a Russian background. She was born in Israel. She grew up in Israel. Was never aware that she wasn't Jewish. But later in life, when they went to get married, discovered that her mother is not Jewish, her father is Jewish. It's a very common thing in Israel that happens. Those of you who know what Nitza, my wife, does for where she works, would know that Nitza deals with these kinds of things on a daily basis. And he told me that in the middle of that his I guess wife, partner is going through a conversion. He said because they're living together, he has to go through the course as well. And he was sharing with me, they're doing it proper in a Beit Din L'Giyur in Tel Aviv, and he was sharing with me the difficulty of it. He said that he himself comes from a Masorti, traditional background. He says, but she is the one who is very important to her, because she wants to make sure that her children grow up without anyone doubting their background, without any questions. And so she's taking the course very, very seriously. Says, and he is too. It was interesting to hear his experiences. Some of his experiences are more positive, and some of them are more negative. And he said that they've been in the course for a whole year, twice a week in the evening, twice a week, 3 hours each time. In the evening, they go to this course, and where they learn halachot, they learn history, they learn, and it was just interesting to see and hear from him that the degree to which, on the one hand, they're interested in doing this, on the other hand, they find sometimes that the people that they meet and they discuss it with, especially from within the religious community, are suspicious of them or of their motives. And it was there isn't a bottom line, but we discussed the fact that we would discuss it further, and because he felt it felt to me like he was starting to develop doubts to what degree he wants to continue with the process. Although, as he said to me, but my wife, she plans on going and making sure that we go all the way. So I said to him, well, if she said on it, my guess is that that's what's going to happen. But that was interesting, something new I encountered here as well. There were many more conversations throughout Shabbat, maybe 10, 12 long, meaningful conversations with individuals or groups. There's one more that I'd like to share because I found it to be very interesting. There's the tent. I sleep in an area right next to it, together with the medical team. There's a certain overlap between their job and my job in real emergency situations. How shall I put this? My work begins when their work ends. Hopefully we won't get to that, but that's why we're stationed next to each other. So one of the guys who sleeps in the tent next to my tent, we were just sitting around. Everything's quiet. Everyone else is kind of resting or off doing something else. And he says to me, "I have a religious question for you." I said, "Okay." I'm accustomed to hearing that opening, and he asked me a question that kind of took me. I was surprised by it. There's a certain type of question that I usually get asked, and this one was a little different than what I'm used to. Again, this is not a observant person at all. He defines himself very much as a secular Chiloni who, anyhow. So he says to me the following. He says, "I don't understand how it could be that Bnei Israel, they received the Torah at Har Sinai, and they heard and they saw, these are his words, saw Hashem face to face, panim el panim, and then 40 days later they were praying to a statue of a calf." He said, "I don't understand, how could it be? How could it be that after they experienced such a thing and such certainty, they were able to just throw it all away and go ahead and worship a pesel?" So, so there's always different ways to answer a question, and a lot of it has to do with who is the person who's asking. And a lot of times you have to try to think in, what are they really asking? Is it just a intellectual curiosity, or is there something deeper to it? So, I know him pretty well already. We've spent a lot of time talking, and we're living in very close quarters the last 2 weeks. So I said to him like this. I said that, I said to him, he smokes. Okay, a lot of the guys here smoke. Some of them smoke also in their civilian life, but a lot of people who even don't smoke in their civilian life, they smoke in when they come to the army. It's part of the culture. So I said to him, "Look," I said, "do you know that smoking is bad for you?" He said, "Yes." I said, "It's for certain?" He said, "Yes." I said to him, "So why do you smoke?" So he said to me, "I'm not addicted." I said, "I know." He said, "I don't think he really smokes outside of the army." He said, "Because it's something to do, and I don't think I know it's bad for me, but I'm weak, and I do it because I feel like doing it, even though I know it's bad for me." So I said to him, "Well, to some degree, it's." I said to him, then I went out and said to him, "Listen," I said, "I don't want to pry too much, but do you text during driving?" I said to him about myself. I said, "Listen, I know for certain that it is very dangerous to text while driving. Everyone knows it. But sometimes I do it." And I said to him, "Do you do it as well?" He said, "Yes." So I said to him, "Look, so we all know that having intellectual certainty or even emotional certainty about something doesn't automatically mean it's going to change our behavior." I said, "And yes, did they have certainty in the existence of Hashem? Did they experience a closeness with Hashem? Yes. But miracles, the concept of miracles, doesn't automatically mean that a person will be able to change the way they behave. It doesn't change your personality." And then I went on to say to him what I think was the bigger issue. I said to him, "Look," I said to him, when I was younger, when I was much younger, a teenager, I always found it a little suspicious that all the great miracles that happened 2.5, 3,000 years ago. I thought it's very convenient that they happened so long ago, where no one was there and witnessed it, or no one alive today has any recollection of it, and none of us have experienced miracles of that sort. And he kind of laughed and he nodded his head, and I guess aiming at maybe what really was troubling him. And I said, the truth is, I personally would, and then I said to him, but later on in life, I understood that I personally think I would prefer to live in a world without miracles, without revealed miracles. And he said to me, really? I said, yes. He said, why? He said, because revealed miracles, it doesn't, when you look back in the Torah and I look at the stories and I look at it doesn't look like too many of the miracles had an effect that actually transformed the people who experienced them. I said, there's something about miracles that scares me a little bit because they seem a little coercive. And I said, and I think that that Hashem would much prefer that people slowly and gradually understand what is expected of them, understand the value of this lifestyle, of this life, of this being part of this historical continuum, and people slowly over their life making choices, daily choices that are not the consequence of being wowed and shocked by something that is just so powerful, like a miracle, that could very easily make a person feel very small. And as we see, I said, and I said to him, like your question, I said that even though they had an absolute certainty in the existence and the closeness of the relationship with Hashem, and it wowed them to the point where they were scared or where they felt small, felt insignificant. 40 days, the next morning, the next 2-3 days later, it didn't change the fact that they still had all the weaknesses they had beforehand. At the end of the day, what it was really expected of us is to very slowly and gradually make daily choices every minute of every day, make choices that are consistent with what we've learned, with what is consistent with our tradition, with our history, and aimed towards slow and gradual growth towards what Hashem wants from us. So he thought about it a little bit. He said, I've never thought about it that way. He said, I need to think about that. It's a very different perspective. I said, yeah. And then, the conversation continued to other venues, but it was interesting to hear his question and to discuss it with him. So I thought I'd share that as well. And I'll just finish with this last statement that looking back on the Shabbat where I had these 3 conversations, but as I said, many, many more, what a amazing army we have. What a beautiful, what beautiful soldiers we have. What amazing neshamot we have, that they're at war, far from home, far from their family, in very difficult conditions, and they spend their day talking about faith, talking about Jewish history, talking about personal choice, talking about providence, talking about Jewish destiny. And if people had the patience, I would share more and more and more of these stories from Shabbat. But believe me, we have our army is like no army in the world. I doubt how many times in history Am Yisrael has had an army filled with such tzaddikim and such tzaddikot. And as much of it as it sounds like a cliche, I have tremendous hakarat hatov that I'm able to be here and to have these conversations and to see what beautiful neshamot we have. And just like there are dozens of people like that over here on every single base throughout Israel, this is the Israeli army. This is the Jewish army. These are our soldiers. So Be'ezrat Hashem, with these types of people, these types of neshamot, I have no doubt that we will continue and get stronger and we will win, and that there will be positive outcomes to this war as well, Be'ezrat Hashem, very soon and for many years to come. In the meantime, Shavua Tov to everyone.